And to thank Mike Lubitz, I snickered at your skepticism, your usual paranoid pessimism about your favorite team in town, your Miami Heat. What an abortion that was last night. He'd go down to the Hawks. They go down in flames. They lose the game by double digits and trailed at one point late in the second quarter by 24 points. They did manage to make it close a couple of times. In the third quarter, they made a rush. In the fourth quarter, another run. They cut it down to 5. That's as close as they got. But they lose a game that you would have never thought would have gone that way. I was completely optimistic that the Atlanta Hawks were a bunch of choking dogs. I don't care about the little cute curly, hair that Quinn Snyder has in the front of his head. He was 10-11 as a head coach with the Atlanta Hawks after taking over for the rather quiet and reserved Nate McMillan. The team was in disarray. We had mentioned that they were probably as dysfunctional a family as any, right? I don't know. You want to compare them to the Mansons? Would you say that was dysfunctional? I guess the Murdaws weren't exactly on the same page, as evidenced by recent trial activity and the things that happen out there by the kennel. The Mayweathers, of course, we know notorious for dysfunctionality, but the Hawks they hate their star. They had their coach, who was a very accomplished guy and seemed like a guy that would be a player's coach, a guy that you would want to play for. He had great respect as a player and as a coach. Nate McMillan. He gets fired late in the season. They replace him with Quinn Snyder, who obviously has had an excellent career as a head coach, very distinguished, but didn't really have a lot of time to work with the Atlanta Hawks before they got to this postseason situation where they come as the 8th seed at 41-41 on the road. They take on the Miami Heat. Heat with a shot at redemption after competing for the 6th spot. They could have guaranteed themselves a playoff spot with a little better finish, and instead, flatter than a Parisian runway model. Lubie, are you okay today? That would be the question. Psychologically, are you okay? Are you now? I mean, Heat fans will go in two directions after this one, and that would be, yeah, well, we'd rather play Milwaukee anyway.
No.
That's A. Or B, well, what's the point of going to the playoffs? Because we're just going to lose. They now take on whoever emerges from this game that's going to take place tonight between the Chicago Bulls and the Toronto Raptors. Raptors, I believe, a 5.5 point favorite in that game. And you would have to think, while it's competitive, I don't know. Which team scares you more for the Miami Heat? You're saying both, Mike Lubitz, Mr. Skeptic. How are you, by the way?
Depressed. I don't know. There's always a reason to make the playoffs. I thought
You
they.
called it, man. You were. I kept baiting you to go ahead and lay the 4.5,
I wasn't.
and you wouldn't do it.
I said I'd lay it because I thought in the end they'd win and they'd cover, but it wasn't because I thought that game would go that way. I thought it'd be a close game. I didn't think it would be that. I mean, I didn't think it would be effort. Like I didn't think it would be. I just thought they'd miss shots because they missed shots all year. No, they were just lazy as hell. They literally. It's funny. Someone said, "Yeah, the South Beach flu." I'm like, not for the home team. The South Beach flu
Yeah.
isn't came from South Beach. That's
If anybody figured to be afflicted by it, and this, I guess the antithesis of that whole theory would be the way the Hawks came after being in Miami on a Wednesday night, I guess it was, and then they get a night off on South Beach and come back and have to play the Heat after a 1 day off at home again for the Miami Heat. And they took them right to the wall there, 130-128 the last time the two teams met. But to be down now like they were, I mean, they just annihilated in the first half. And, except for that late run in the second quarter, I mean, it looked like they were going to go to the locker room down 20 plus. And then they cut it to 15, I think, before halftime. They kind of teetered back and forth, made a little run. But to the Hawks' credit, that they kept responding. And the annihilation on the boards, what was startling. You mentioned that Bam Adebayo was a guy that you needed a search warrant to find. And that was the case for most of the ball game last night. 63-29 rebounding edge for the Atlanta Hawks. When did they get Joel Embiid or Gobert or somebody like that? 26-6 on the offensive boards, and there were plenty of offensive rebounding opportunities for the Heat because Jimmy Butler played like there was a lid on the basket. Very uncharacteristic that he would be unable to convert right around the basket. But I have never seen Jimmy Butler miss so many close range shots, and that could have been a difference in the ball game as well. But 26-6 offensive rebounding edge and second chance points for the Atlanta Hawks enormously in their favor. Just a completely lackluster, inexplicable lazy effort by the Miami Heat at a time where you figured, oh, okay, just get this over with
Yep.
right now. You don't want it to come down to a one-game proposition, a play-in game against two teams that you have found to be very competitive against you all season long.
Well, and first of all, for whatever they did against the Hawks, the last 2 years they all but swept them last year in the playoffs. I think they beat them in 5, and then this season they're 3-1 against the Hawks. The Raptors and Bulls combined, they're 1-6.
Wow.
They're really bad against both those teams. And recently, since the Raptors have found their footing, they were abysmal against the Raptors. Like, you don't want to play either of those teams. The Hawks, they not only match up better against. The Hawks are in total, like you said, they're in total disarray. They literally announced that they're willing to, meaning they're going to trade their star 2 days ago. Yesterday, it came out that they have been monitoring Trae Young because they don't trust him. Like, something like that comes out the day of a game. That should be a walkover. Like, it was really weird. Like, if you look at their stats, Hero had 26 and Butler had 21. And then Lowry, who's been horrendous, had his best game.
Lowry was amazing last night.
He's the only reason that they were in it at all was Lowry.
Yeah.
But when you watch the game, Jimmy Butler missed like 6 layups, which he doesn't miss. Bam missed like 7 or 8. Like, okay. And if
he does seem to be back to being unsure of himself on offense, like he was in the playoffs last year.
He's 6'9", 6'8". He's 260 pounds. He's considered a big man. If you're under the basket and you get a rebound, or you're under the basket, don't you just try to dunk it? I don't understand the futzing with it on the ground. Like, it's what I would do because I can't reach the hoop. Why? Because 2 things are going to happen. The one thing I'll give the refs, they were calling fouls for the Heat last night. Like, if you were around the rim, Jimmy Butler went to the line a ton of times, and he didn't deserve it at least half the times. Like, why would Bam, aren't you taught, go straight up? Like, I remember hearing that my whole life. Like, why is Bam?
Take it up strong. I mean, I can hear coaches still yelling, go up strong, go back up strong.
I don't get it. He gave away like 10 points by just not being aggressive. Like, I don't know what happened to him from the All-Star break on, but it's like, all right, I'm going to go back to what I did last year. Yeah. I really enjoyed people complaining about me every night.
They had Tim Donaghy, I guess, refereeing this game, too. I mean, they wanted the Heat to make the postseason and face the Boston Celtics. I don't know about being better off facing the Milwaukee Bucks. Some people were theorizing that, including our good friend Harvey Fialkov put that up on social media. And I'm like, there's no justification for what happened last night. That was a completely lackluster effort, totally uncharacteristic of a Pat Riley team. I didn't realize Eric Spoelstra has been coaching this team for 15 years.
Yeah, and he looks
like it seemed like yesterday they just took him out of the film room there. I mean, he was filming Nick Harrison's bar mitzvah. And the next thing you know, he's named head coach of the Heat 15 years ago already. 15 years. But he seemed a little bit exasperated by it all. I meant to mention yesterday, I'm a big fan of Clint Capella. And there was a prop bet. Here are some of the interesting prop bets that were out there on this game, Lubie. If you're inclined to bury yourself, not only by picking the wrong side, but then by getting involved in individual players, which seems to be the popular thing, right? FanDuel and DraftKings, I think, are both making it off young people that are betting small amounts of money on outrageous prop bet parlays.
Every day.
There were a zillion of them for yesterday's game. Interestingly, how good are the line makers, right? We once again, there would be no issue with gun control if the bookies were running the country. The guys who were making the odds, because they would already have figured out a way to solve it. I was watching some presidential candidate, I guess, was he a former governor of Arkansas or something? Okay. That's running for the Republican nomination. And point blank on CNN, the host is asking him, so what would you do about gun control? And he just kept dodging the issue after talking about, well, these senseless killings. And then when pressed on, would you do anything to mandate any kind of control or legislative action that would at least eliminate the ability for nutbags to buy assault rifles or try to, address it? He was like, the Second Amendment.
No.
Muskets, my friend.
No.
Muskets. That's what they had when they wrote the Second Amendment.
It's
one of those things. You put 2 little balls in the thing, and you were lucky if you got off a shot.
The Constitution is full of a ton, like the stuff we have here, where you can't buy alcohol after. The Constitution, you can't pick and choose. If you want to do that, well, we're going to live by.
Yeah.
You understand all the garbage that's in the Constitution that we do not follow.
It was written in the Stone Age by comparison.
300 years ago.
Yeah.
So stop. And if you're going to follow the Second Amendment, again, you said it's about making an army, and none of us are making an army.
No.
Okay.
Well, some people are, unfortunately. I don't want to get too heavily into that because I wanted to go over these prop bets here, which Jimmy Butler Over under 27.5 points. So that went well under. I believe Trae Young had 25 in the ball game. His over under number was 24 and a hook. The interesting number that I took a look at, and I thought about making a move on this, believe it or not, Clint Capella, over under rebounds in the game, 10.5 was
Oh
the
my
line.
God. Did he really go that much over? Do I want to know? I don't want to know this, do I?
He ended up with like 21 rebounds in this ball
Oh
game.
my
Clint
God. Are you
Capella,
fucking kidding me?
21 rebounds. So that was a gift. I guess Bam Adebayo, did he have 12 rebounds or 12 points? He
He
had
had
12
12,
something.
9, and 4. Like, if you look at that line, you're like, I guess that's not horrible. The problem is he's supposed to be a max all
12,
star.
9, and 4 in that situation is not a good
Like,
line for your
and they don't
one
have
of your
big.
star players.
Like, and I thought about it. I'm like, I know Capella is on the floor, but I don't think he played that much. Capella played about half the minutes. So most of the game, they didn't even have a true big out there. You're telling me
No.
Bam? I don't even know who is Johnson. Like, they had some of these guys out there that I've never heard of, and they were doing whatever the hell they wanted.
Well, and they out hustled the Heat at virtually,
Hustle was
and virtually every aspect of the game. It was kind of crazy. The halftime total, which I believe the halftime score, what was it, 65-50 in favor
yes.
of the Atlanta Hawks? The over-under number for the halftime score was 114.5. How good are
Jeez.
these guys? I'm telling you, Lubie. Let's elect a bookie to be our next president, and all of the legislative bodies should be filled with nothing but line makers, odds makers, and bookies. That's it. Although prognosticators, now that's a whole nother thing, and we'll get into that in just a second. But anyway, the Heat go down, so they play Friday night against the winner of tonight's game between the Toronto Raptors. This game is in Toronto, and the Chicago Bulls. I don't know that you want to go with my prediction on this because the NBA is largely, I mean, by and large, forever has been a chalk league that you could almost take the seedings and just say, okay, it's going to be the Bucks going against the Denver Nuggets in the championship round. I don't know that that's going to happen. There are some really, as Al Bernstein, our good friend, would say, intriguing matchups in the first round of the playoffs, including a giddy bunch of New York Knicks followers that think that they're in there with a legitimate shot to do something against the Cavs. And yet, it was interesting. Grant Long was on our Defo show yesterday on South Florida Live, and he doesn't give the Knicks any chance at all. This is an impartial body, judging from afar. There, he's in Michigan, working with the Detroit Pistons broadcast team. Which that alone, it's amazing that Grant Long was even coherent yesterday
Yes,
on the show.
he still has a love for basketball, which you would think Detroit would have beaten it out of him.
They're optimistic. He was talking about how they were like fifth in the league in attendance or something.
Yeah.
Who the hell? I mean, what kind of self-sabotaging, suicidal types are going to Detroit Pistons games thinking it's only going to get better from here?
Yeah, that's actually the
They
only.
lost like 23 of their last 24 games. It was a total abortion. I mean, one of the worst seasons ever by
Yes.
any team in professional sports history. My 62 Mets at least were lovable,
Yes.
right? But they're laced with promise, and imagine that. I mean, people in other town, we're crying about the Heat still having a shot to make the postseason. Imagine having to go through what would have to be one of the most insufferable years that you've ever seen any team have after year of being involved in the so-called Philadelphia 76ers process, where they're drafting very highly, they're
Yep.
getting top-notch young talent, and they just can't seem to make any of that work out. All right, interesting development last night on the baseball diamond. I was trying to flip back and forth a little bit because it was kind of difficult to watch the entire Heat game and see
That was
them just
rough.
getting cremated on the boards. I mean, did they have a welcome wagon out on the glass also? I mean, were they gifting them a bunch of coupons so they can go get discounts at restaurants on South Beach with every rebound?
I don't
Imagine if some restaurant had a proposition about offensive rebounding differential, where they said, "Well, if the Heat get out rebounded on the offensive glass, we're giving away a $25 gift card."
It looked like it. It was an NBA game. Like, usually, you don't see a team get like 4 straight offensive rebounds.
That was insane. All right, it's hard to imagine that this hadn't happened in the 30-year history of the now Miami Marlins, formerly the Florida Marlins, as they had never had a guy, and they've had some good hitters on this team over the
Yes.
course of time. They had never had anyone hit for the cycle,
No.
which, I mean, it's an interesting thing. I don't know. There was once a long time ago, I remember debating Joe Rose on a morning show with the first team many years ago on WQAM. And Joe was trying to contend that the cycle is a much more unique accomplishment in Major League Baseball than pitching a no hitter
Mm.
and was more exciting to witness. I don't agree with that at all. I mean, a no hitter, of course, is obviously rare, but the cycle would seem to be just kind of, more of a fluke than something where a guy had to sustain a level of excellence and maybe get lucky also, but across 9 innings. Not as easy for a pitcher to go ahead and shut a team down to that degree as it is. It seems arbitrary. All right, guy's got a double, he's got a triple, he's got a home run, and so and here's Luis Arise, who is the one good acquisition I think that Kim
Yes,
Eng has made in her lifetime,
that's it.
which only constitutes a couple of years as GM, because the other guys that she picked up last year are absolutely disgusting in terms
Dreadful.
of statistical material here. I
So
did a
Larry
little research on this, Lubie. You'll
suck.
find this surprising. What were you saying?
So Larry and Garcia suck.
Soler, who hit 207 last year, is off to a robust 190 start this year. Now, it's early, and a guy could get a couple of hits, and his average could go up 50 points. But as is the case with Jazz Chisholm, who was hitting 170 just a couple of games ago, and now, after going 2 for 5 last night, is up to 250. Which is no great shake because, for all of the excitement that we had about Jazz Chisholm, he
He
only
should,
hit 260 last year.
he should be an average guy. I know average doesn't matter anymore, but he's a fast guy who can hit for power. He should have a good average. Like that's a guy. He should get on base. He should steal bases. He's a guy that should have a good average. I don't give a shit what era it is.
Well, and also, if you're not laced with power throughout the lineup, which obviously the Marlins are pretty much bereft of power, although they have hit a couple of home runs. John Birdie had a home run last night off. Aaron Nola didn't have much for the Philadelphia Phillies. In fact, he's off to an horrendous start as a 7+ earned run average and is 0-2 early in the season. Aaron Nola, who's one of the real linchpins,
Is there ace?
was, of course, of their success last year going to the World Series. So he's floundering. You have Avisail Garcia. He's off to a really, I mean, this guy's busting it. I'm surprised the Laces even stay on the ball when he's at bat. He's hitting 103 so far this year after unloading at the plate to a 224 average last year.
Oh my god.
Way to go, Kim Eng. And probably the worst of them all is Jacob Stallings, the catcher they acquired.
Oh my god. I forget he's on the team.
Jacob Stallings is hitting 071. And last year, he was horrible all year. He was below the Mendoza line all year, except I think late in the season. I didn't really see his stats from last year. I didn't have time to get into that. But he might have cracked the Mendoza line late in the season. He sort of put together a little bit of a run there at the end of the year, but horrible in general, and even more so this year. Meanwhile, Arise is hitting over 500 and hits for the cycle last night. He needed a single in his last at bat. And this guy really does. He is a spitting image, not necessarily from a physical standpoint, but in terms of his approach at the plate. Exactly, Ron Carew, man. Hits the ball with occasional power, but is more likely to keep the ball in the park. Yet, wherever the ball is pitched, that's where he's going. And that last base hit was a perfect example. Takes a low pitch the opposite way, and he had hit an opposite field homer. He had a broken bat triple into the corner in right field earlier, a left-handed hitter. And I think he's hitting like 537 or something like that, 540 for the season so far. So Kim Eng going 1 for 4 in terms of the anti-stiff theory. She finally made a deal. Now, you did trade frontline starting pitching in Pablo Lopez. We don't know what kind of season he's going to have, but he was a very steady performer for the Miami Marlins. Didn't always benefit from the best of luck in terms of record, but was a great representative for the franchise. So they traded a lot to get this guy under the auspices of let's put more balls in play. And that is the one thing so far that has worked out for Kim Eng. I guess the Luzardo deal, was that on her? Kim
Yeah.
Eng?
It was, the last couple of years, and he's turned into be their second guy. He's actually legit.
He's doing well. Yeah. He struggled throughout a lot of last year. And then came on late after being injured. He came back, had a couple of good starts, and really has been excellent so far this year in all three of his starts. So the Marlins get a victory, a rare victory last night. The Lakers also, I mean, they were down 15 in the third quarter, Lubie.
What happened with that game? I went to bed going, oh, shit, I think the Lakers are going to lose.
They came back and beat Minnesota in overtime. A weird play at the end of the game. Lakers are up 3. Mike Conley's in the corner shooting a desperation 3 with 1/10 of a second to go in the game. And they call Anthony Davis for a closeout foul. One of those Kawhi Leonard, Jaja Pachula fouls. They call it. and which they've been calling this more and more. But I mean, this was you talk about should swallow the whistle, and they give Conley 3 foul shots. He makes them all. First one hits front rim, crawls over. Second two are swish swish, and they go to overtime. But the Lakers manage to prevail, so they now move on as a 7th seed. And the Heat in history, there's only been 6 games now, are the only 7th seed ever to lose in that first
Yeah, they
playing
always
game.
win. You're at home and you're playing a team that is usually.
And playing a team that generally sucks by comparison to anybody else that's in the postseason. So that was that. And the Panthers clinch a playoff spot.
Answers.
Yes, they benefited. Pittsburgh lost, Buffalo lost, and that laced it up for them. Finally, they ended up in the postseason, and they will make it. And will they be, Lubie? I'll leave you with this, people. Will the Panthers be a dangerous
Yes.
commodity in the
Yes.
postseason this year?
The Panthers are what I wanted the Heat to be. The Heat look like, and that's my thing is you always want to make the playoffs, but I actually don't want to see this team anymore. And it's not for draft capital.
Well, you're going to be seeing a lot of them next year too. I don't know what they're going to do about their roster.
I just don't want to see them this year. Like I just want the season to end. It's been an abysmal year. It's been Butler or bust. And it's not like I'd like to make the playoffs because you might as well, but I just don't want the season to go on anymore. It's been dreadful. It's been abysmal.
It's enough already.
The Panthers are the opposite. Like
Yeah.
right when you were ready to go, you literally call him the French Joe Philbin, Maurice.
Yes.
That yelling, he finally showed that he gave a shit. And the team's like, oh, okay, coach, I guess we'll go play now. And the last 2-3 weeks, they play with more heart than they play with the entire year. They're getting after it. Their defense is not great, but better. Their goaltending, even that game, those 2 goals were sort of schmanky. Like Ryan played great the whole game. Their offense is woken up. Kachuk is leading. It's like, this is a team that, dreadful cliche, you don't want to see this time of year. Like that's what they look like. And I'm really intrigued to see what they do in the playoffs.
You have to love, in the NHL, momentum going into the postseason is big. Although Boston seems to have momentum from day one, and established a record, winning again, I guess, last night, and established an all-time record for points in a season and wins in a season in the National Hockey League at a time where I don't know that it's that easy to do that. Because if you look at it, so many teams, so a lot of watered down talent. It's not like the 6-team league, so think about that. You have the Boston Bruins able to sustain a level of excellence from bell to bell, and are going to be very, very tough in terms of the Eastern Conference playoffs, and of course the Stanley Cup. But where what is it, the Avalanche that they have to worry about out west? I think so. Colorado's been good for a long time. All right, we have to run. That's Defo on 5 for today. So a mixed bag of results. We did have a guy, I think it was like 4,300 games before the Marlins had a guy hit for the cycle. So congratulations in order to Luis Arise, new addition to the team. Only been with the team about 11 games, 12 games now. And he accomplished something that no other Marlin that walked before him or wore the uniform before him, including Jeff Conine, what was able to do. All right, we'll see you on Defo on 5 tomorrow, and also later on South Florida Live with the Defo Show. I'm Jeff DeForest for Mike Lubie Lubitz, and I'll catch you next time on 5 Reasons Sports Network.